We're live. Hi, and welcome to Gay Out the City. I'm your host, Prince Electro Diamond, and today I am here with author of the book Pride and Prejudice, host of the Mindfulness Podcast, psychiatrist, Dr. Matt R. Salmon. How you doing today, sexy?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me here. It's great to be here.
Yes. Exactly. Work. So, what was it like for you growing up as a kid in Arizona?
Uh, you know, Growing up, I would say so. There's kind of like the before I realized I was queer, and there's the after I realized I was queer. And before,
Absolutely.
yeah, before I realized I was queer, I wouldn't have really. It probably, I feel like it would have just been like any other childhood, things. I was really happy. Had a really good like home life. It felt like, and I was a native Arizonan, and so that still, to me, Arizona still feels kind of like home for me, despite m- the politics that are there.
Of
But
course.
yeah, and but then around 9 years old was when I realized I was queer, and it was also the same time I started being bullied for it. And so it was like that's when things just I started to second guess everything. I started to realize that like there was that I wasn't accepted in the place that I grew up, and I had to hide parts of myself. And so from like 9 on, it was really challenging and just kind of dealing with a lot of small mindedness and just like ignorance, really.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would totally get that. As someone who's originally from and still lives in a conservative state now, I'm planning on moving in a few months, fingers crossed. So it's like I'm born and raised Floridian. So
Oh wow,
I
yeah,
I have definitely have that conservative upbringing. I had, as I always explain to people, I have the like contradictions of everything because it's like I was raised in this like extremely religious, like Republican Catholic household. But in the other side of things, my mom was the one who introduced me to Madonna. My mom was the one who introduced me to Joan Rivers. So it's like I really had these like conflicting messages. And I remember being a kid on watching on Fox News saying like how horrible of a person Madonna was because she was like singing like a virgin and dedicated it to the Pope and like how that was such a big deal. And I'm like, and how she's on a disco cross and everyone was like freaking out. I'm like, what is the big deal with this? I
yeah.
probably starting at about it wasn't until I got older. So you said you knew at 9. I think I started having inclinations at 12
Okay.
and wasn't like my next question is what was it like for you coming out? But I didn't honestly come out until I was 18. So like yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't come out. I kind of came out in stages. Like I first told my mom when I was 14. Um,
Wow.
but she kind of, she actually kind of surprised me. She didn't really react much to it, and it was kind of she kind of had this idea that it must just be like some healthy curiosity, and it was like a phase. And I'd been dealing with this for like 5 years, so in my head, like as a 14-year-old by this time, like I knew it wasn't a phase, but like I think I mean, and there are for some, there is curiosity and it is healthy. And that's like, and so like, I don't think she wasn't wrong. She just didn't know all of what I went through. And so she ended up taking me. So I grew up Mormon, which in
Right.
well, Arizona is like a very Mormon place, especially in Mesa where I grew up. It's like one of the most densely populated with Mormons outside of Salt Lake City of any other place. Um, and she took me to a therapist who actually was one of like the Mormon church's therapists, but took me to them to for me to be able to talk about what I was experiencing. But instead, the therapist um, diagnosed me with porn and masturbation addiction and said that that was my problem, and that treated me for that and treated me as if I was an addict, instead of just what my mom wanted, which was to have me be able to talk through like these feelings that I was having and make sense of them. And so it was really just kind of twisted how everything ended up in that way.
Wow. Yep. I have that too.
Yeah.
That comes at the tail end of my story. So like
Yeah.
what I say, I give it up to people who had to tell two parents because I didn't. Because when I came out 4 months after my mom died. So it was only
Oh,
having to come out to
oh,
my dad, and then I have an older sister who was super accepting, and then like back in November I found out she came out herself, and I'm like, well, now that makes sense.
oh yeah.
Like, yeah, like that.
How's your
I'm
dad with
thinking,
it now?
uh, he's good with it. I actually haven't asked him about my sister because it with her it was like kind of weird because it's like she came out literally and how I found out I was just looking on Facebook one day and like was like scrolling through and then all of a sudden my sister had her maiden name again and I'm like, well, that's weird. And all of a sudden I started seeing this queer stuff and I'm like, oh, so she got divorced. And then once I put two and two together, I kind of basically welcomed her to the family as any queer brother should. Like,
Yeah.
but she knew I had it rough because, as I said, the family was the easy part. Hard
Hmm.
part was so I came out to youth minister at the church,
Oh man.
which was a mistake
Yeah.
because I told him about this performance idea I had with like a knife and how I'd practice stabbing myself because I'm a musician. I'm still a musician to this day. And like,
Hmm.
of course, like any queer person, I love drama. I love the theatrics. So he left the room. He came back in about 10 minutes later. He said, okay, you have one of two options. Either you're coming with me or I'm calling the cops.
Wow.
Now, in hindsight, if I could go back and tell myself at that time, I'd be like, let that motherfucker call the cops. They're not going to do anything to you. All they're going to do is like ask you a bunch of questions and they're going to let you go home. But
Yeah.
instead, I went with him. He took me to get a psych eval. They had told me I had passed it. So then all of a sudden I was on the phone with my dad. I'm like, yeah, come back here and get me. Like, I'm all ready. And then all of a sudden I had a cop yell at me. He's like, get off the phone. I'm thinking, like, what the fuck is going on here? Like,
Wow.
and then they put me in a hospital room. And then for 5 hours, they just left me in there. Didn't
Wow.
tell me anything. And then after that, they told me that I was what they call in Florida Baker acted, which is when they put you on a suicide hold.
Yeah.
Transported me from the hospital to behavioral clinic where I had to spend I got I got released early. I would have gotten released earlier if I hadn't gotten I brought got brought in on a weekend.
Yeah.
So I had to do almost the full 72. I did 64 and then the weekend psychiatrist kind of like released me so I went back out. And then about I want to say a week later I met with the youth minister and a priest who got me into a room with a therapist who did 4 sessions with me who tried to pray the gay away.
Yeah. So you did conversion therapy?
Hmm.
Yeah. Hey, I I went through that too. I know what that's like.
Yeah.
It's pretty terrible, and it's really terrible that it's still going on.
It's yeah, because I would say this. Some people say money is the root of all evil. I'm someone who believes that religion is the root of all evil.
Hey,
Be-
you won't get an argument from me.
Well, I mean, of course, if you went to convert, because yours was all I did was have somebody like pray and do stuff. Did you go through like the actual like kind of like electroshock
I didn't
and
do
stuff?
any I didn't do any electroshock, but I went to I was in it for a year and a half. I did weekly individual counseling. I also did weekly group, and then I also went on pray the gay away camp weekends and stuff like that. So I did a lot of there was a lot of kind of deprogramming in there that I went through. I mean, I guess lucky that none of it was ever like physical abuse, but it was a lot of emotional abuse and gaslighting.
Of course, that's what they do for everybody. It's not like
Yeah.
all you do is, I would say with that, all you do is you turn people to the world and not saying that it doesn't work out great for some people. Some people have great experiences, but as I always say, if I had great experiences, I wouldn't be a singer songwriter. Like,
Yeah.
that's honestly so. Like, my tale of like getting out of that was so I ended up moving away. Actually, no, I ended up staying at home for about. So I came out when I was 18. I stayed at home for about 2 years after that, and in that time, I was trying. I was trying to go to church still, and then at 20, I basically said, "Fuck it." I'm like, y'all ain't gonna accept me. Let me go live my life.
Hmm.
But in that time, it's like, um, as I say, I was suicidal twice. I got raped and I got sexually assaulted. So I mean, like, so it's like everyone's like, so a lot of people try and like say stuff where like, would you change everything? I'm like, change anything? I'm like, no, because I wouldn't have become the strong bitch that I am today if I hadn't gone through all the shit that I went through.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hold a similar mindset. And 20 actually was when I basically said fuck it as well and
Yeah.
just decided to live my life. That was when I left conversion therapy.
So wow. So yeah, a year. I mean, I'm just trying to think because like I did, as I said, I did 4 sessions and I basically, from what I remember at that point, I kind of like distanced myself because it's like, well, because for some people, they think it works for about a year. I thought it worked for about 6 hours. And then all of a sudden I saw this guy that I was like into. I saw his ass and got hard. And I'm like, nope.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I can't even say that it worked at all for me. I mean,
Well,
I just
clearly.
yeah. I didn't see I mean, I didn't really see any benefit there. It was it mostly just drove a wedge between me and my family because they blame my family for me being gay, or my dad especially. Um, yeah, and made me feel like I was diseased. It was really messed up.
They blamed your dad.
Yeah, they said that he was because he was he traveled a lot for work. He was away a lot for work, and so because he was away a lot, they said that I didn't have a strong enough male role model to attach to, and because men were somehow kind of like distant to me. They were exotic. I made the exotic erotic. And so instead of becoming attracted to women, I became attracted to men because they were more foreign to me.
See, okay, I'm just like I know clearly it's wrong, but I'm just trying to think about how at all logically that would make any sense. Like,
Right. I know it reminds me you remind me of that like that meme with of the woman who has all like the math equations around her and she's just like trying to figure like this math is not mathing.
no, because it doesn't make any sense. It's like, first of all, I love that they would blame your dad, the Republican congressman, for you being gay. Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
what? Like,
Yep. Basically. Because he was away too much and so I over identified with my mom.
wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of just like yeah, like twisting any kind of science or like explain like they just kind of it's just manipulation of information and data.
See, and this is the thing where people talk about like gays and religion. This is my thing. I understand people wanting to believe. I'm trying to think about how to say this because I don't want to show my biases here. But I understand people wanting to believe in something. I am very much when people say like, "What do you believe in?" I think my thing is more the greater good, doing things to help people. Like, not when people want to like drag religion into it because it's hard because I explain to people, especially like telling people my story. It's like, well, why would that at all enforce or make me feel like, oh yeah, religion's the right way to go? Anyone who
Mhm.
went through that experience and is still religious, I have to say, good luck to you, bitch. But
Yeah.
I think you are fucking crazy. I have no problem saying that. Like, especially because this was the thing. This was, as I always say, this was when I came out was like the shift before like the extreme conservative shift that we had in this country, which
Mhm.
would be 2016. I came out in 2012. So like that was when it was more trying to think of how to put this. It was getting more liberal towards like 2012 to like 2015, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden the country, well, I would say the crazies just found more ways to being
Yeah, they
emboldened.
got louder,
Yeah.
like yeah, found way somehow like found ways to get into power.
And now 2024, I am one of those people who like, and I know people are like, we have to vote for Joe Biden. I'm like, I get it. I get in if that's the final in the general, like we're down to probably Donald Trump and probably Joe Biden. I understand you saying at that point, but it's like we haven't even had a primary yet.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna shoot down Marianne Williamson before she even has a chance to like go into the ring. Like, come on. Like that's
Yeah.
just yeah,
It's pretty bleak.
yeah. So how hard was it for you emotionally to have to help edit anti-gay legislation?
Yeah, so you know, that was when I was doing that, that was when I was in conversion therapy and I was kind of like fully drinking the Kool-Aid at that point. And so like I thought in my head, I kind of like convinced myself that I was doing the right thing, and that I was on the right side. And so, like, but you know, at the same time, it just it felt wrong, and it just really kind of ate me up inside. Um, I, you know, like I super grateful that what the stuff that my mom was working on and that I was helping with or looking over, um, that didn't end up passing. At least at that time, it did. Unfortunately, a couple years later, when they retried it, but yeah, it was like there. I mean, it was all cognitive dissonance. It was just like that, like kind of just total brainwashing that I had gone through that led me to think that what I was doing was like acting in the right way. But just deep down, I knew that it was kind of eating away at my soul.
Yeah, I mean, because this was the thing. Even like, I will put it this way, probably like, well, much like you said, you probably like towards the start of conversion therapy, you thought it was working probably for like a little bit of it, and then like all of a sudden you had that like ding flash moment of like, oh yeah, this is all bullshit. Like,
Hmm.
and then to have to, I don't think I could do it. It's why like even people who like going back to the political stuff, it's like I understand. I'm not gonna say understand. If you want to be a gay Republican, that's fine. I think you're insane. But if you want to be a gay Republican, that's fine. But it's like, how could you sit there? Because you know that they're never gonna fight for you. They're
Yeah,
always gonna fight against you. Like, that's just how it is. And especially, okay, yes, we can make the argument when Matt was writing that legislation, when Obama was in office towards like 2015, they can kind of have the argument they were at least putting on a front to
hmm,
try and be the people that were accepting. But after Trump got elected and you saw what actually was going on, how, like, at that point, it's like,
are you there?
okay,
Okay.
there we go.
Sorry, what was it that you just said?
I stopped for a second because all of a sudden I saw both of us go away and then we came back. Anyway, I'll go back. So it's like after like Trump was elected, it's like with all that and you see all of it, it's like people were being
Mhm.
blazing at that point. So it's like
Yeah,
now anyone who's just like going towards that, it's like granted, yes, I understand you want lower taxes, you want all of this grab grab yourself up by the bootstraps bullshit of like
yeah.
yes. Clearly I am let's put it this way. Anyone who's like, oh my god, he's anti-capitalism, duh. Like,
Yeah, no, hey, I'm with you.
yeah.
I have changed a lot in my views over the course of the last several years. I mean, that was back in 2006 was that first time my mom was working on that legislation, and you know, even after when I came out, um, I pretty much I left the Republican Party and became independent.
Mhm.
But then I thought that I could maybe try to make change from within. And so I decided to um, take over the log cabin Republicans, which are the gay Republicans. So
Mm-hmm.
I switched my party back to Republican so that I could do that. But just as you're saying, what I encountered was, a lot of the politicians actually were very supportive of gay rights. And they would say that, but they would literally tell me, while I support you and I think this is a great cause, I will never do anything about it or speak in any way publicly about it because I won't get elected. And so I just became so disillusioned that and it just seemed it was just so hopeless that I just gave up on all of that.
Yeah.
And knew that like working from the inside was just not going to actually do any good. And yeah, I mean, I've become quite liberal, I would say anti-capitalist myself.
Yeah.
Because yeah, the whole pick yourself up by your bootstraps, I mean, it's completely illogical and it's an impossible feat to do anyway. Um, and there's so many cards stacked against so many people, that if you're marginalized in any capacity, you just, I mean, it's just not a fair competition.
See, so you were doing that. So you were probably back being a Republican during the time of, and I know this from researching history. So like during the whole time of like the Larry Craig stuff that was going on, and like the Mark Foley stuff that
Hmm.
went. Yeah, I know about those stories. It's one question. The progressive in me would have loved to have asked my mom about all that stuff, because my mom actually did work for Congressman Foley in the 80s. So I would have been the one to be like, so hey mom, was this stuff going on in the 80s too? Like,
Yeah.
because that, and it's like, yeah, so it's like, what was it? I saw this movie on the Log Cabin Republicans. I think it was like right during the second Bush election, where it's like between him and like John Kerry, and it was like all these Log Cabin Republicans were like, we're going for John Kerry, because it's like, I don't care how Republican you were. Anyone who voted for Bush the second time, knowing, first of all, anyone who voted for him the second time after watching Fahrenheit 9/11, like
Mhm.
you, like everyone thought Michael Moore was crazy. No, they clearly planned it. Like he planned to go into Iraq for no reason other than to kill Saddam Hussein. That was his whole point. And like everyone was saying it, but it's like you have to stand with the president. I
No.
as well, no, I don't. I can't stand for, because first of all, I've said it on here before. Like you're liberal, I'm almost like, as I describe myself, I'm socialist leaning on communist. Like
Mhm.
I love, because a lot of people say communism is a great idea in my view. In theory, people fuck up communism. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like if you just left it at the government provides for you,
Yeah.
fantastic. That's a great idea. But the problem is
Universal
you can't.
benefits.
Yeah, that's why everyone who's like, the healthcare system's so great the way it is now. Like people, it is
Oh,
really
that means yeah, I could go off on the healthcare system. It is so fucked up. Yeah, especially mental health care.
no, because like I don't know the statistics on this, but I'm pretty sure mental health care isn't really covered by insurance.
Yeah, so there are laws that it's actually supposed to be. They're called parity laws.
Yeah,
And while over time insurance companies have gotten better about it, there are still some that don't. And certainly not even like necessarily to the same in the same way that they cover physical health issues.
because well, yeah, because as I always say, for all the non-artsy people, I feel bad for you because you have to end up going. Well, actually, even the doctor here will probably say I should be in a therapist's office instead of writing about my pain and my music. But like, it's how I emotionally cope with things. It's
Yeah.
literally how I've emotionally coped with things since I was like I wrote my first song when I was like 14 years old. So like
Oh.
I don't know anything else other than that. So it's like
Mhm.
the idea of me going in a therapist's office, I'm afraid and I know this is like an irrational thing to think of, but it's like I'm afraid it'll take away some of my creativity if I just start like talking to somebody. I know that might be a little irrational, but I might be I might
I
be wrong
mean,
on that.
it could even have the opposite effect. It could unlock some things.
Wow. That's a good point. If I ever get rich enough to afford something besides Obamacare, like I
Yeah.
might think about it, but it's like,
Well, I will say writing and creating are probably they're they're great coping way. They're like some of the best coping ways.
yeah. So
So get just if you can just get out the stuff that's up here, that can be so powerful.
that's actually my plan this year. So I have an album written. I'm hoping to leave Florida and move to a lot of people. Now that you know that I'm an artist, this might make a little more sense. I'm planning on moving to Detroit
Okay.
because when I told people that they're like, "You're gonna get shot," I'm like, first of all, most people's image of Detroit is Detroit from like the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what Detroit is anymore. Like that's
Yeah,
it's
Detroit's
like
up and coming.
yeah, and it's like and it's cheap. Like believe me, with the way the economy is, as I say, Detroit is the only affordable city to live in now. Like that I know of. Unless I want to move to like North Carolina, which pass. Like
Yeah.
hard pass. Like I do not like at one point I thought I was gonna move to Atlanta. Thank God Atlanta got jacked up because I'm like jacked up in price because I'm like now I can be in a liberal area. So
Hmm.
yeah, that'll
Cool.
be yeah. As I said, I'm hoping by summer because like the thing is I can't stand the Florida heat either. Like that's when I like tell people about how Christmas Day was. So Christmas Day was like 80 degrees here and it was raining. I'm like, this is not Christmas. Like,
Yeah. That's so muggy.
yeah, no. I said hard pass. Let me. And everyone's like, you're gonna have to get used to the cold. I'm like, I know that. I'm like, if I'm moving in June, theoretically 6 months in, by December, I'm not gonna be completely used to the cold. I'm gonna be
He'll
used
acclimate.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing. You probably had to do the same thing when you moved from Arizona to DC. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not too bad. Like honestly, well, it rains a lot more here than I would like. But you know, the dryness of Arizona would everything would just get so dry and chapped. My lips would be cracking, my nose would be sore, just
that
everything was
sounds
dry.
awful. That sounds
Yeah.
awful. Let's see, where am I? Oh, here we go. So, was there at any point when doing interviews slash having to make public statements that you had on a facade to make your relationship with your parents look better than it actually was?
So, when I would say so it's kind of yes and no. Yes, I didn't feel like I had to make it look better than it actually was, and in fact, my if I really wanted to keep like make a relationship better or like make keep peace, I would have stayed out of the public eye altogether. My family would have preferred that I just didn't like make public appearances at all.
Yeah.
I was grateful. My dad never asked me to stop. Kind of leveraging his reputation for my own goals of being an activist. Um, but I did, you know, I softened the way that I would talk about things with my family, more so because I I knew that they were just as like brainwashed in Mormonism as I had been, and that like I couldn't I so like I blame religion. I blamed our church.
Yeah.
I couldn't really blame them because to them it was like life or death. It was like their eternal salvation. It was like a question of their eternal salvation. And when that's on the line, it feels so scary to do anything that might even um like potentially ruin that like chance. And so I could understand where they came from. And so like I generally talked about things in a way that try what like I my hope was that it could bring us together, and also was coming from a place of genuine just like forgiveness and understanding. So even though I experienced a lot of hurt and a lot of
Right.
trauma and a lot of pain from it all, I I at least now, I think, back in the day I held it against them. But now I I can see it for what it was, and that it's a problem of a disease system that allows religion to do these kinds of things and allows these kinds of hateful messages to be spread and imposed on people when people are just trying to live their best lives and be their best selves. And it's so problematic when we live in a society that just tries to force everybody to conform to one kind of narrative when that's just not the reality of the world.
No, that thing of to the conformist nature, I guess, as I always say, this is me being a performer when I put it this way. I literally said, and this is something that I truly believe, which is I will always fight to be an artist. I will never be, as I've said, I will never become a corporate slut. Meaning, like, I will not like force myself to be, um, sort of, yeah, as you said, conform to the way of everyone else. It's almost why I'm glad I have to do this album and do everything myself because I'm
Hmm.
doing everything independently. I'm paying for it all myself. So it's like I don't have to sit there and have some like a room full of like six fucking guys in suits all sit there being like, okay, what TikTok challenge can we do for this song? Because
Yeah.
me as the artist, I'd be like, fuck off. That's the challenge we're gonna do. Because it's like you're not gonna sit here and bastardize my vision for some likes. Like I
Hmm.
just it's almost why when you said to that um religious way, because me as an artist and like when I started like publicly expressing stuff as an artist, especially like in my early days before I like found drag and all this stuff,
Hmm.
my sister actually in some ways like yes she supported me, but she also was the one who's like, oh, you're doing drag for attention, you're doing this for attention, you're doing that, and it's like first of all, No. Like, I mean, granted, yes, was there a lot of stuff I did originally to start out for attention? Absolutely. That's called being in your 20s. That's called being in your early 20s. That's what everybody does when you're an
Yeah.
artist, because like in this world you are constantly bombarded with fame, lights, glamour, do this, do that, succeed,
Mhm.
all this, like get all this money, like get to the top, succeed, grow. And it's like when you all of a sudden stop and you're like, oh yeah, this is all bullshit. Like this
Yeah.
isn't something this isn't something we should be fighting for. It's like when I see artists now who like sit there, like independent artists will be like, come on everybody, let's get this song up to 50,000 streams like on Spotify. I'm like, oh, you're a corporate sellout. And you're not that talented, because if you were that talented, you wouldn't be worried about all this people listening to your music, trying to get all these streams so you can pay the management company who sits there and makes decisions for you. This, I don't know. I would say maybe this is me being locked in a behavioral clinic where you're literally have every freedom taken away. I am the person who's now like, if somebody's going to tell me what to do, I'm going to be like, I'm going to be like, there. No,
Yeah.
I'm, you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do it.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah.
And I mean, and honestly, like as a performer and an artist, like a creative, what's wrong? Like, of course, you're going to be looking for attention. You want people to pay attention to what you're producing. So, like,
Yes.
what's wrong with like wanting to be paid attention to? There's nothing wrong with it at all.
And it's like, yeah, exactly. You're right. And it's like, eventually, it's like, what I do is what I feel is you have to do the trick where it's like, yes, I wear the wig, I wear the like, especially now, as I say, some people like hated the pandemic. I hate the pandemic for some things. I was grateful because it taught me to accept my body. And it's like, if I want to dress half fucking naked like I do all the time now, I'm gonna fucking do it. And like, if you don't like the way that I look, don't fucking stare at me. That's honest, honestly my view. And
Right.
it's like, yeah, it's like, yes, I need to grab your attention and just be like, now that you're focused on me, listen to what I'm saying.
Hmm. Work with what you got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because some people are like, as this is what I will say. There's this is how I put it. There's shock value for just shock value sake, and then there's shock value with intention. What I'm
Hmm.
doing is shock value with intention. Like
Yeah.
I have this like music video concept where it's like I'm shot in like a mental institution in all white makeup and like a long black wig and like no lipstick, no anything. And then like all of a sudden you're flashed and I'm in a church and I'm making out with these two sexy Latino backup dancers that are simulating fucking me in the church. And then they pour gasoline in the church and they throw a lighter and the church sets up on fire and we're dancing in the parking lot. Like that's purpose and intention where it's like that thing of like me wanting this church to burn. I wanted the church to burn.
Hmm.
Anyone who get anyone who got taken advantage of, because that's to be clear. I
Yeah.
love that's the that youth minister took advantage. He essentially used resources to put me in harm's way. So it's like
Absolutely.
so it's
And
like after that, I wanted the church to burn, absolutely. And it's like that is stuff with intention. I always say I love Lil Nas X and Sam Smith. Don't get me wrong.
mhm.
They're doing cheap, shocking tricks to get people to pay attention to them. There's nothing like there's no depth to what they're doing. And that's the thing where it's like if you don't have depth to what you're doing, then yeah, go ahead and attack them all you want. but you're not going to come here and attack me for trying to just like sort of get your attention to say religion needs to stop. Religion needs to stop doing this. People need to stop taking advantage of their power.
Yeah, you're calling attention to a problem.
Yeah. It's like, in terms of, granted, are there certain religions that absolutely needs to be abolished? Without a doubt. I know unfortunately you're not going to be able to end Mormonism and Catholicism. I wish we could.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, with all that, it's like, but you can put your focus to some stuff like Scientology. That's not just a religion attacking gay people. That's a religion attacking everybody.
Yeah.
That's a part of the religion. So it's like, maybe if we just put a light on that and like just focus on taking that down, then maybe eventually I feel some people will see like the light in everything, and then they'll like maybe start to step back and be like, okay, that's that religion. Maybe my religion isn't that great. Because
Mm-hmm.
I remember in the Catholic Church, I started doing research on the Catholic Church's ties to the Illuminati, and they
Yeah.
did not like they did not like that when I started asking questions.
Yeah.
So because I would literally pull people aside from like the youth group center. I'm like, so why, if we're supposed to be for God and everything, why is there an all-seeing eye in the Vatican? These are the kinds of questions that were not accepted.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely am with you. And it's
Yeah.
funny you bring up Scientology, because it was actually thinking about Scientology that caused me to start to really question Mormonism. Because I just remember one time my dad was talking about Scientology and how kind of big of a joke it was, and how like um it was started by just this like science fiction author who wanted to just invent a religion. And I started thinking, like, how is that like that much more wild than just a 14-year-old treasure hunter who like claimed he saw God in the woods? And he was like, well, they talk about how like humans were once like aliens and like whatever. And Mormons say that humans used to be what are called like from another dimension, called like intelligences. That's what Mormons refer to what we were before we became spirits put in bodies. We were intelligences. And I was just like, okay, I'm seeing a lot of similarities here. And then he was like, and they have to like pay lots of money to advance in the church. And Mormons, like, you have to pay at least 10% of your income. Plus, every month you have to pay an extra like lump sum of money to them in order to like have full privileges. And so I was just like, all of these things sound the same. And yes, I can see how like Scientology is fucked up. And now I'm starting to see that Mormonism is too. Like there's like too many parallels with why they're both messed up.
I did not know that. Well, I would say this. I don't do much research on Mormonism because it's like, I, d- I don't need lots of reasons to hate a religion. It's like, when I talk to people about Jehovah's Witnesses, it's like, here's the biggest thing where it's like, see, this is why I when I move to Detroit, I'm hoping to live on like the second floor of like an apartment building, so that way like you don't get the Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on your door. Because
Yeah.
I'd be the person who's like, I'd be like, bye bye, I'm a fag and I like celebrating Christmas. Get the fuck off my doorstep. Like this insane thing of, oh, we don't celebrate our birthday. I'm like,
Yeah, it's so weird.
I'm like, first of all religions have their things. Somebody pointed out that Catholicism and witchcraft are basically the same thing, except the only difference is one of them's kind of cool and one of them's Catholicism. Like,
I like that.
yeah, but it's like, as I said, my dad is still my dad's still like all the time goes to church as part of the Knights of Columbus, like all that. Like
Yeah.
my sister, well, this is the thing. I haven't really talked to my sister. I should probably interview her. My
Yeah.
fans, if you want to see me interview my sister, like I'm pretty sure I can convince her into it because we don't really talk. But it's like I don't know because her thing was she used to look at me because like once I stopped doing anything, it's like even times there were like a few times that I came home when I used to live in Orlando at one point. I used to come home. I think I came home like maybe once. And like I tried to go to church and like I went in and like during communion, she and my dad went and I just like sat there and I'm like, she's like, you're not gonna go up? I'm like, no. I think this is all ridiculous. I'm just here because I try to be nice.
Yeah. You didn't want to eat the body and blood of Christ?
No, I did not. I did not. I did not. No, I did not practice the cannibalism that Catholicism. Yes, I call it cannibalism. Get mad at me.
Mhm.
Yeah, my dad hated that argument. Whenever I say that to him, I'm like, he's like, it's not cannibalism. I'm like, you're the one who's saying it, not me. I'm just pointing out to you that's what eating people and drinking blood that's cannibalism. Like,
Yeah. If it walks like a duck.
yeah, they say it's symbolic. I'm like, I don't know. Again,
Yeah. No, Mormons
it's
do it too. They do sacrament. They take sacrament.
see, wow. And this is the thing. Mormonism's not that old, right? From what I remember.
Yeah, it's like 200, just over 200 years old.
So see, like, at least with Catholicism, the passages, stories, like,
Mhm.
'cause that's literally it's like you could at least like I'm not the person who says like there was never somebody named Jesus. There probably was a dude named Jesus.
I mean,
Because
I
all
know
that
many actually.
yeah. Yes, exactly. It's like I know plenty of guys named Jesus.
It's a common
Oh,
name. Yeah.
yeah. A lot of them want to fuck me.
Hey, I mean, he did have 12 Judes following him around
Yes.
everywhere, and he liked feet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. But it's like first of all, walking on water, burning bushes, talking snakes. I'm like, they're like, it's symbolic. I'm like, it's symbolic for what? Like, this sounds
Yeah,
like it was written. The whole Bible sounds like it's written by a drunk person. Like,
probably was.
that's why it's like,
In fact, some of them were drunk.
that's exactly why. What was it? I saw in a movie where like they pointed out where they were talking about like the story of like Jesus turning water into wine, and then they had like a drag queen who says that's not bartending. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
like, and I'm like, good fucking point. Like,
That's a skill. Yeah.
yeah. Work. So okay, where am I? So I guess what was it like for you moving from Arizona to DC, other than like the weather that you said before? Like,
Yeah, it was. I would say it was a pretty big change because I mean, out in Arizona, I'm sure like if you're familiar with this, like you pretty much it's hard to get around without a car. Um,
right?
and and so like coming to DC, it was kind of a that one of the things it's a pain to have a car because
Yeah,
like it's hard to find parking. It like especially like if you want to find a place with parking, that's almost impossible. And so best luck is trying to find a spot on the street, which means you could be parking 3 blocks away and have to walk to your car every day. And then on street sweeping days, you have to move it, make sure that it's not on the side of the street that's getting swept or you're going to get a ticket. And so it's a lot of parking tickets and paying for parking different places. And that just was not, that part was really an adjustment for me. And so, I mean, after a little while, I just got rid of my car and have been without since, and I'm really glad for it. Um, but otherwise, and like out in the West in Arizona, people might not have like the best opinions or the most informed opinions, but they're usually a lot more like laid back and at least nice to your face. In DC, people can be really a lot more short and not as friendly at the start. It can be a little harder to break into things socially here.
See, I mean, I can kind of get that. Like, that's why, like, I've met some people who've like worked in Detroit, and I've met like in drag queen in Detroit, and I'm like, that's what I like is that people in Detroit, at least from what I seem nicer than people from Florida. Because I always tell people like, Florida is very clicky. Like,
Yeah.
it's honestly why I don't perform much in the area that I'm at. They're like there are two drag houses and I'm not part of either of them, so it's like nor did I want to be. Like
Mhm.
when I moved back to I live in my hometown now. When I left from Orlando after living there for almost 4 years and moved back home, I'm like, especially when I heard about the drag houses, I'm like, why would I become a part of the drag houses when I didn't know this at the time. When I started this podcast, I didn't know if I was going to be successful at it, but it's like clearly I'm now. What is it? I'm 2 years into doing this podcast. I'm a year into interviewing people, and it's like I did something that they couldn't do because they were all like focused on this area, Fort Lauderdale, like all
Yeah.
that, and I'm like, as I say, I gave myself the like biggest challenge in the world, which was I tried to like go get people in LA, which came
Hmm.
with its own challenges. And eventually, once I started like building a resume, I was able to find like people in this in Florida who like all of a sudden once I started interviewing people, it's like, well, now I can see what you're doing. It's like now they came along. I do say I have a drag sister who was part of one of the houses, and she like took me in, and like that's really the only person I like talk to because it's like
Yeah.
my thing is when people say like, granted, yes, is it scary the idea of leaving? Probably much like you thought. Like the idea of leaving is scary, but once you actually do it, I feel like you have to struggle a little bit, but eventually you find your way. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to that, it, you know, I talked for a long time about wanting to leave, but I always made up an excuse to stay. And after a while, I had to realize that like I was just letting fear win. And so knew that I needed to finally like just take the plunge and go. And I mean, it was pretty scary, um, and exciting at the same time. But like fear and excitement, they're like two sides of the same coin. One of them is
yeah,
kind of like a positive. It's positive fear and negative fear, and
yeah,
so I just really try to lean into that positive excitement, and but like on the I drove with a friend of mine. We drove across the country. He came with me to help me move, and just like as driving, I just kind of it almost felt like I was. leaving a piece or like leaving a piece behind. But as I've been here now almost 7 years,
Oh
um,
wow.
I'm yeah, I'm so happy that I made the change. And I probably won't stay here forever. But like now I see myself even trying out another place altogether. Maybe something different. Just to get a feel for something else, you know?
Right. And it's like, do I plan on being in Detroit forever? No. Am I gonna be there a long time? It's like my thing is like, as I said, I did my 20s in Florida. I'm about to turn 30 this year. So it's like doing my 30s in like Detroit or maybe like,
Hmm.
yeah, like, because as I said, not only is Florida clicky, but it's also it's like, it's really expensive. Like, this is the thing. Like, I know DC is expensive. Like, can't even imagine. Like, but
Yeah.
it's like that too, and it's like I'll find my footing in Detroit, and it's like eventually, I don't know. My goal at some point. So I have like a concept for like a singer songwriter show that I want to
Hmm.
do with like as I always say, it will have to be put on like either streaming services or like HBO or Showtime because you can't put me on CBS. I swear too much. I swear too much. Like
Yeah.
so it's like, but I love the concept of like so my idea for my show is it's you get four singer songwriters, one of them being me, so it's me and three other people.
Hmm.
It's you put them on and you have each of the you have the contestants compete like and create all these songs and then every week you have one of the judges rotate out and perform a song that they're thinking about that they're like either
Cool.
writing or like putting out. It's like so that way you don't, as I say, that way you prove to the people who are watching the show why the judges are there. Because like
Hmm.
I remember I love American Idol, but I remember those years of everyone's like, why is J Lo there? J Lo can't sing because they can pay her the amount of money. That's why she's there. It's like yes, we all know J Lo can't sing. Like don't get me wrong, I love J Lo. Well, actually, I'll say it this way: I love the bitch that sings J Lo's songs. Like that's not J Lo, but
Well,
it's like
now she's an actress.
yeah. Actually, come to think of it, J Lo sucked as a singer and sucked as an actress. She's literally just like a model that they happen to like give certain things to because she's not really like
Hmm. Well, apparently, did you know? I guess she like wrote her own musical that she produced. That's on Amazon now.
oh yeah, I heard about that. Like,
Yeah.
but it's like yeah, so like with that, and I say like what you could also do is you could have like the judges also like kind of do compete with or like sing with like split the teams up into
Contestant.
groups like and like have them sing along with the singer songwriters. As I say, like it's
Mhm.
honestly just because like because I will admit I'm the person I've tried out for American Idol before. I've never made it. It's like that thing like that mold. I realize I don't fit. Like
Mhm.
I'm not gonna sit there and like because it's like yes, you could. As I always say, there's always a difference when covering somebody else's song versus doing your own song.
Yeah.
Where it's like doing your own song, that's your baby. Like you had to go through some of the blood, sweat, and pain. I always say like I always say you have to have a mixture of both. You have to have like
Mhm.
the really, really emotional songs and like the fun songs to do. Because like you have to fill out a set, and you don't want to like. Granted, I make dance music. I'm not an Adele. Like I love to sing, but like that idea of me just standing in a microphone doing every song singing, I like that idea. I would love to do a show like that, but that's not my whole
Hmm.
thing. It's like I love like Lady Gaga's my favorite artist, so like that's more what I'm like, where it's like you like yell intensely at the audience. You're not or actually
Yeah.
it's not that you yell at them, you yell towards them, like you're
Hmm.
acting. That's why it's like people's like all she
Yeah.
does is yell. It's like
It's a performance.
yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. So what made you want to create the mindfulness podcast?
So yeah, it was actually just was talking with my friend who I hosted with, Gene, and we always have really good conversations. And we were one night we were having a really good conversation, and I just like stopped him and I was like, Gene, I think that we should record our conversations and just make a podcast out of them. And so we decided to try it out, and we really liked the way that things ended up like happening and the conversations that we ended up having. And we take a little break for a bit, but we're going to start up another season. And kind of like you, I think you were saying that your second season, you started interviewing people. So that's like what we're going
Yeah.
to do with our second season, is start to bring on other people to have conversations with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just was really born out of enjoying talking to my friend and thinking that like other people might be interested in the kinds of things that we talk about. And so we decided to share it.
Yeah. So what what started this? So like season 1 was kind of me explaining kind of what life was like leaving from again to the title gay out the city, me leaving Orlando and moving back to small town Florida and how hard of an adjustment that was because it's like
Mhm.
it is like it was all this like when you're working it's like work and then all of a sudden you work and then you go out and perform and then like you're out here doing this and like you're dating people and you're doing all this and you're having all this sex and like you're just sitting there like grinder hookup after grinder hookup and then all of a sudden it's like once that ends and then you're forced to move back home
Mhm.
it's was having the adjustments to that and it's like and that was season 1 and then in season 2 I'm like at some point I'm like I've told all the stories well I thought I had and then all of a sudden I started interviewing guests and started remembering stuff and I'm like
Yeah.
oh yeah let me tell that story which as I always say I'm not going to get into any of the nasty disgusting stories today because Matt's a doctor and I'm trying to behave myself but but
Hey,
it's like
I've heard lots of things. Don't you can't make me blush.
but it's like with that and then I started like all of it is the one thing that I will tell you I mean you may not have this problem because people kind of know who you are. It was really hard for me getting guests because it's like I had like peaks and like valleys and dips of like so I started in January and from like January to June I was like booked up all the time. It's like boom, 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 boom. And then July I just hit a slump.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is how it is. And then in August and like I picked back up again. But I did the challenge. I did something a lot of people wouldn't do. So like I try and do 2 interviews a week. Two
That's a lot.
interviews a
Yeah.
week at minimum. There's some weeks, what is it, like 2 weeks ago I did 4 interviews in 1 week. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, because and 2 of them I did in one day. I was like, as the person who's like, it was Super Bowl Sunday, and I'm like, well, fuck, I don't give a shit about the Super Bowl. So I'm like, let me just interview somebody in the middle of the Super Bowl. Nobody's gonna watch this anyway. Because I'm like, but I've met I've met a lot of people. I've had some some friendships. I've had some very short term friendships. Like
Mhm.
that's the thing. It's like, so one of them was like the craziest one. So I was friends with this person. Like they had been on here 4 times. I went to go hit them up for a fifth time, and like all of a sudden they like were ignoring me. I'm like, well, that's weird. And then all of a sudden I woke up one morning, went to go look at them, and I found out they had unfollowed me on Instagram. I'm like,
Hmm.
that's nice. It's like I would have talked to you if I had a problem with you.
Yeah.
That's how that's the kind of
I,
person I am. Like I don't
I
like,
wish more people were like that.
but I'm like, this was somebody who called themselves a straight shooting son of a gun. I'm like, how's that straight shooting?
Mhm. Yeah,
How's that?
it's so I know when people are so indirect like that, it's I don't like it. I can't stand it. Like that's somebody who's doing you a favor, really.
Yeah, as I said, like I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, like granted, you have to go through like when losing a friend because it's like it's very hard, especially like the way that I always describe this to people, and as I literally said in my Instagram story yesterday, it's like the way I do things, like I am actually someone who's like, unlike most podcast hosts, usually when I'm done, depending on who the guest is, I actually have a tendency to like give a shit about them when they're like
Mhm.
done. So it's like if I see somebody that's like in pain, I'm the first person who like reaches out because it's like that's I don't know. I would want somebody to do that for me. That's kind
Yeah.
of like the person I am. Like that thing of, but with that, you also have to realize the difference between somebody who's just looking for attention and somebody who's actually like going through something. Like,
Mhm. Yeah, I mean it's great that you have that empathy.
yeah. And it's like my advice to people: always be wary of people from LA or people who have lived in LA at some point. Like that is because I will admit I thought about moving out to LA at one point, and I'm
Mhm.
like, and I had to have that conversation with myself where I had to be like, bitch, you if you go out to LA, you're gonna get yourself kicked out of every party in 3 days. Cause I'm not gonna be like the person's like, oh my god, babe, you were so good. You did that song so great. If you were horrible, I'm gonna be the bitch who's like, who the fuck told you you could sing? Like,
Yeah.
like, do y'all got ears? Like, am I the
Yeah.
only one who's hearing this?
Yeah, don't let her think she's better than she is.
No, I just I mean, granted, is there a nicer way that you could put that? Yeah, you could be like, so what's something that you actually can do? That's a nice like cushion way into
Yeah. How do you feel about feedback?
this. Because well, this is the thing. I always say like, if you're not expecting to have criticism as an artist, Stay down in your basement, baby. Stay down in your basement. That's where like
Mhm.
there's no criticism in your basement, but it's like I will admit this. I started in like the open mic scene, like in
Yeah.
open mic nights and straight bars. There were plenty of times where like I had to like walk out to like fix my face because there are some people who's like I don't know, like some people think they're good and some people think they're like amazing. It's like, listen, I understand that thing of you have to tell yourself you're amazing, but it's like if you're not realistic, where it's like I know I'm never gonna be an opera singer. I have no problem with that. Like I was the person who rebelled against that choir way of doing
Mhm.
things because I looked at that and I'm like, I used to do it in high school, and I used to always be the one who at the choir teacher would stare dagger eyes at because my voice has a tendency to like slide
Yeah.
because that's just what happens. It's like I'm sorry, I'm Christina Aguilera. No, I'm kidding. But it's like I knew I wasn't for that, and it's like, am I glad that like I learned some of the stuff from there? Yes, but it's like, did I know that I was never gonna succeed, and that's why I didn't go to college, which was brief. Like
Yeah.
I'm someone who's like most people that you see that get there are artsy people that have college degrees or because they got like a BA in theater. Like they got a degree that serves them no purpose in the real world.
Mhm.
Which is what I wanted to do, but my sister talked me out of, where I'm like, I should listen to you. I could have been on Broadway. Or
Yeah.
or I could have been on like the off Broadway like theater in Brooklyn, which is probably where I would have
Be
thrived.
the next
I love
the next Jinx Monsoon.
yes, Jinx. Oh my god, Jinx. I love Jinx.
Yeah.
Jinx is one of my faves.
Fabulous.
But it's like, as I will always say, I love New York. I'm one of those people who's like, you always know, like in high school when you think like, I want to move to New York City, and then reality hits in, and it's like, oh yeah, New York's not affordable. Like, not in the
Yeah.
slightest. Like,
And it's dirty and it's loud.
see, I wouldn't. That's why when people talk about like the idea of not having a car, that's my thing with Detroit. I was like, I wouldn't mind like having a car and like not having to use it as much and being able to use public transit because
Mhm.
Orlando is a city, but it's like it's one of those cities where it's like if you don't have a car and you can't walk somewhere, you're pretty much fucked because they have a bus system and that's about it.
And yeah, and the buses, they're not frequent and
No,
don't get you super close to places either.
no, because it's like yeah, go take the bus. It's like, do you have 4 hours before you have to get to where you're actually planning on going? Because that's
Yeah.
what's happened when you take the bus. Like, so where am I? Oh, so what's your dating life been like?
My dating life. Oh, I mean, well, that's kind of I was dating somebody pretty seriously up until recently. And so like recently kind of back on the market. Well, kind of I guess licking my wounds a little um from that of like kind of in recovery mode still, but yeah, plan to get myself back out there.
Yeah,
So I mean I would say I I don't know. I find dating to be difficult for me because I do not like dating on apps, and that seems to be the way most of it goes down these days. I would much rather meet people in real life and then kind of figure things out from there. But Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see how it goes this time around, but I'm not looking forward to it.
See, dating apps. As I've said before on here, I'm always like, before I've said I'm in like my man, like how I put it. Because before I would always say it's complicated situation because like we had to have the conversation because he thought at some point he's like he told me, "Oh, I'm gonna move to Orlando after you move to Detroit." I'm like, "But you still want to date me? That doesn't make any sense." Like he's like, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden we had the conversation last time. He's like, I know you don't want to move to Orlando, and it's like you're right because I lived in Orlando twice. I know
Yeah.
not to move. I know like after two times you learn that you don't want to live somewhere, and it's like
Hmm.
third time it's like I've been saving up money. I've been working up. It's like I am the person who's like when I see the money with Florida, it's like go like
Hmm.
literally you know this like anyone who's like unless you're like home town is like New York City, Atlanta, like one of those kinds of places,
Hmm.
leave. Like trust. And it's like if you want to move to Miami, great. Live here for honestly, I'd give people a year. Like
Yeah.
you live in Florida a year, you're gonna want to move. Like because it's like, yes, it's a great place to party, but it's like I will put this analogy in people's head. It's like, would you ever want to live in Vegas? And
No, I absolutely get what you're
and
saying.
and if some people say like yes, it's like okay, this person's not an adult yet. Like because
Mhm.
granted, I've never been to Vegas, but like from what I've heard, Vegas is not the place where you like grow up. Vegas is the place where you
No,
stay a child eternally. Like
absolutely. Yeah, I think it'll, and I think, I think, I have to say that like 30s have been way better than the 20s. And so like I think if you move to Detroit and you get to kind of start a new chapter there, I think that you could have really great time in your 30s in the new place.
yeah, and plus it's like this is my other thing when people say like Detroit. I'm like, look at it this way. If for some reason I run out of stuff to do in Detroit, I get myself a passport. Canada's 10 minutes away.
Hmm.
Like, so honestly, if I run out of stuff in Detroit, which I don't see how that's possible, but let's just say it's like
Yeah.
it's right there. Because guess what happens when you go 10 minutes in Florida, you're still in Florida. Like,
Yeah.
chances are you're still in the same town. Like, that's that's why like when I'm planning on like finally moving, I'm planning on having movers move my stuff and flying because like
Hmm.
I remember because I thought about moving to Atlanta at one point. I used to do that drive back and forth from like Atlanta to my hometown,
Hmm.
and that is that is 12 hours. Like, and a lot of that is getting out of Florida because Florida is so long. No,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what's your relationship to drugs and alcohol?
Let's see. So right now, I have I've kind of taken a pause a bit from alcohol. I was for a while I was kind of a big stoner, and so I have realized that I don't have great self-control when it comes to marijuana, and so I've been completely abstaining from that. Alcohol now I kind of only drink on special occasions. Um, and like I'll experiment with other like um other stuff for parties or things like that, but it's rare these days that I even go to parties anymore.
Yeah. See, for me, alcohol, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I had like a night, which I always have to state this to people before I say this. I don't have a problem, but I had a night where I was outperforming, and like, this is one thing that I will say, getting in like my mid or getting into my like late 20s and hopefully into 30, you realize you can tell people, no, I'm good. Like when people try and buy you drinks, you can be like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
It's like, thank you, I appreciate that, but no. But when you're in your early 20s, you don't realize that. So I had a night where I was getting handed drink after drink after drink after drink after drink.
Mhm.
And then I got in my car and I had to
Yeah.
drive and I had to drive an hour home. And then about 45 minutes into the drive, I got pulled over by a cop. And luckily, as I say, my dad came and saved me. Otherwise, we would have gotten a
Mhm.
DUI.
Well, yeah,
So
that
I'm
was
like,
lucky.
that kind of that stopped me. And then I realized I'm like, you're a singer. Like, because what I feel like people don't realize, a lot of people don't realize, is that alcohol dries out your throat.
Mhm.
Where it's like,
Makes
if
sense.
I'm gonna be singing there, like singing and like sort of like being dramatic in the way that I am, it's like it's better for me to have water or green tea than to
Mhm.
be drinking all this alcohol. And it's like, and not only that, being the sober one at the party, you get to see all of these people make complete fucking fools of themselves. Like,
Well,
I had a drag queen who like in this area who like shit talked my drag at one point, and like I went to an event out of drag, and like she didn't know who I was. She was like so drunk off her ass, and then she started hitting on me.
wow.
And part of me, like, I thought it was funny because I'm like, I just let her keep doing it because part of me wanted to be like, bitch, you fucking know who I am, like, but I didn't. I'm like, I'm like, work, okay.
Yeah. No, I remember early 20s, I was kind of a mess. I had this I would when I was in my early 20s and first started drinking, because I didn't start drinking until like I was like right about when I would turn 21. Um
Same.
and yeah, that was kind of the Mormon, like growing up Mormon, we didn't drink. And so it I never allowed myself to before that. And it actually, the night that I was telling you about, that night that I had the kind of discussion about um, um, Scientology and like
Yeah.
Mormonism, and realized like it was all a joke. That was the first
Mm.
night I drank. Um, it was a New Year's Eve actually, and um, I had that conversation with my family on a like I was visiting them for for Christmas holiday, and then I was going home to see or going to visit friends on New Year's Eve, and I was like, I was texting them on the way. I hope we can go somewhere where there's alcohol because I am ready. um, and but like in my early 20s, when I was going out afterwards, when I would go to the bar, I would make friends with the bartender, and I would get the bartender to tell me what people were trustworthy, that if they left their drink at the bar, I could drink from it and trust that it wasn't drugged. And so the bartender, I mean, usually it was people that like had left for the night, not just like left their drink unattended. But
Yeah.
like if somebody left any of their drink left that they hadn't, or they didn't finish their drink and then left, I'd ask the bartender like, "Hey, do you trust that person?" And they're like, "Yeah, they're pretty trustworthy. They wouldn't put anything in it." And then I would like finish the drink off. I was a I was a total mess.
See, there is that thing about trusting the bartender because this happened when I lived in Orlando. This was so the thing was the bartender knew me,
Mhm.
but I was there with my best friend and my boyfriend at the time, and like he didn't know them, so he charged me one price for a drink, and he charged them two different prices.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, and they're like, oh, how? They're like, how much did you spend? I'm like, and they spent like 12, $13. He's like, how much did he charge you? I'm like, 9.
It helps to know people in the industry for sure.
It's like, I'm sorry, like I know the bartender, like of course I probably no, I didn't flirt with the bartender. I flirt with people a lot on here because I feel like what was it? I remember one time like somebody's manager asked me, like I had somebody's manager hit me up and they're like, so what are the requirements for guests to be on your podcast? And I had to sit there and I'm like, okay, what bullshit answer can I give this? Can I give this um manager? Because
Mhm.
I can't tell the manager the truth, which is if I want to fuck the guest, that's usually what can get them on the podcast. Like I can't tell somebody's manager this. Like I have to have some form of professional decorum, but it's like I came up with some BS excuse, but it's like for me, it's like obviously like anyone who's like looked at the guests that I've had previously, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who's ugly because it's like
Well, I'm grateful to be among on the list.
of course. And that's the thing, it's like I'm interviewing models most of the time. I'm interviewing like models, porn stars, OnlyFans content creator. You actually brought up the like intelligence level of this podcast because like see, I could do a serious interview people. I'm interviewing a doctor.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I'm happy to be that.
yeah, well, I mean, my thing is it's honestly when I tell people my interviewing inspiration, I have two of them. One of them is Wendy Williams, and the
Yeah,
other
I can.
one is Howard Stern. So it's like that thing of it's like, yeah, of course I'm gonna do like a little bit of back and forth because I know plenty of journalist people say like my interviewing inspiration was Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer. Ugh. I have no problem like granted, yes, everybody has their own style, but I have no problem saying this. Diane Sawyer and Barbara Walters, I don't give a shit that Barbara Walters is dead. They're the two fucking worst interviewers ever. Like,
Very dry, just so dry.
it's not only that, especially like Diane Sawyer. You look at what she did to Britney Spears, it's like, then this was, I had somebody defend Diane Sawyer on this podcast before. I'm like,
Right.
and this was in the infamous like Britney interview. This is before her memoir came out. And I'm like, Diane Sawyer was grilling her to make her cry. Like,
Yeah.
it's like all you have to do is like watch that interview. It's like that was her goal when she said, what did you do to cause him so much pain?
I know. So
Um,
twisted
that's first of all, it's like when you look at that answer, that's very sexist to ask that question. Like,
and very leading.
yeah, it's like, and I will say, like, this is why if I ever had a team, if if a manager let or manager or publicist ever let anybody do that to me, they would be fired, like done. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
it's like how can you like sit there and be like, "Oh, but they didn't." Yes, that's why you hire publicists. I wouldn't want to hire a publicist because my view is I run my mouth a lot, so it's like for the first like few years of my life, I thought I was going to be dead by 25. So I figured I'm like, if I'm going to be dead by 25, I might as well run my mouth now.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, when I turn 26, I'm like, fuck. I'm like, I'm actually gonna make it. No, but I don't know any better. Anyway,
It's
so
gotten you this far.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like that's why people have no problem coming back. At least in my view, it's like 2 and 3 times because there's not this like fake like stuff. I'm gonna be the person who's gonna ask someone like, when was it? Who did I have? Um, I had the porn star Ricky Roman on here, and he like when I opened up to him, is like all of a sudden he started opening up to me, and it's like that's the kind of interview you want to have with somebody, not
Hmm.
this like this thing of this frivolous stuff of it's like, oh my god, queen, yes, work, like slay. It's like, yes, it's great to have those interviews, but it's like, especially when you do long form, baby, if you're not ready to talk, you will drown in this thing. If you're gonna like hold parts of yourself back, you're gonna fail. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I like this. I would never survive on TV because it's like that thing of you have to sit there and like tell people, I loved your newest single. It was amazing. I definitely like listen to it all the time. In the back of my mind, sometimes being like, I hate this song. Like I sit here and have to promote this because CBS told me I had to, but it's like,
Mhm.
no, mess. So, what are your thoughts on how the LGBT community is being treated today? On how the LGBT community is being treated today?
Man, so you know, it's it's so infuriating because it seems like we move forward and then things just things just take a hit and we fall backward. And I mean, because like I believe, just like I think it's like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera would say, like no equality for any of us until or like no liberty for any of us until there's liberty for all, or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I'm paraphrasing with it, but like I don't feel like we can really say that our community is liberated until every one of us is. And so while, yes, like while the kind of cis gay white person who is like hetero passing, may be accepted in our community, in like in society, the like rest of the queer community isn't. And and uh and it and some like those that fit within that, or so many of those that fit within that, like that box, they just think that the fight is over. And yet, like we see things like with what happened with like Nex, and the bullying and assault that they experienced and ultimately lost their lives as a result of. Or you have in like Missouri, where lawmakers just made it a sex offense if teachers honor the pronouns of their students that are maybe different than their sex assigned at birth.
Right.
And or in like my home state of Arizona, they were trying to make it illegal for a teacher to do that. Or like they were trying to pass a law that said like teachers had to out students to their family if they came out at school. And it's just it's so backwards. And it goes back to, like we talked about religion being evil, because the
Right.
root of all hatred is religion. And it's really unfortunate because they, out of one side of their mouths, they talk about love and loving other people and loving one another. But in practice, what they end up doing is just so harmful and damaging. And so, and I mean, and as a psychiatrist, like I'm part of this system also, that like psychiatry originally called homosexuality or queerness an illness, a disease to be cured. and are partly responsible for conversion therapy, which I ended up going through, and yet to this day, all they'll do is put out a paper that says it's wrong, but not really do much more than that. They have so much responsibility for it, and yet they don't do anything about it.
Right.
It's still to this day like permitted to like happen to people like across in every state. It's still legal. Some of them say you can't do it to minors, but it's still legal for young adults or like within religious contexts. And so there's still a war being fought against our community. And so like I don't we're still not anywhere near where we need to be. And it's
Right.
2024. Like
Hmm.
I don't know what it's going to take, but I have to hope that things will start to change and they will move forward. My like the one thing that I hold on to is that like this is just the far right like kicking and screaming, knowing that they're losing. And this is their last ditch effort to try and like squash things, and they're my like belief is that they will lose. It's just we're going to lose people in the process, and that is not acceptable in my opinion.
Right. This is where I'm going to take a slightly pessimistic approach, but I will say yes, we do need focus here in America, obviously. But it's like, in terms of where we're at currently, and this is a sad thing to say, it's about as good as it's going to get the way things are now. I feel like our focus needs to be less on America and more internationally, because
Yeah.
yes, it's sad that like that story as you talked about, where it's like that non-binary student was killed. It's like you have people who are just being killed in like other countries for being gay, just for being gay. Like
Yeah.
it's like insane to me, where it's like, yes, I understand all the stuff that's happening is bad here, but it's like in some ways, this is what I would argue. If America's gonna leave anything, if we're gonna leave countries or like give foreign aid to countries, they need to give foreign aid to help try and protect LGBT people of the world. And I know this
Mhm.
is some people saying like this is self-serving. This is a humanitarian issue. Them sending
Yeah.
aid over to Israel to fight in this fucking holy war that's been going on for decades.
Again,
You're not
religion.
you're not helping anybody. Like literally everyone's like, but all they're gonna do is fight. I had a simple solution. I was kind of joking with my friend about this. And I'm like, here's what you do with the Palestinian people. You give them back some of their land, you let them build casinos, and you let them take all their money. It worked in our country. But it's like, everyone's like, that's insane. But it's like, why? Because this is the thing. When people look at it, it's like, yes, they went in on stolen land, much like the United States did. Like,
Yeah.
the, it's like this whole thing of like, this one's bad, this one's this. It's like, none of them are trying to find like a diplomatic. See, this is the thing. People don't look in politics today. It's like they almost don't try and look for a diplomatic approach. And it's like diplomacy is the best way. It's like, granted, is it going to be hard to do things in the Middle East? Of course. Because it's like you let the Middle East have this like sort of distrust of America. But it's like, yeah, I can understand why everyone's like, everyone tries and blames terrorists on stuff, but it's like going back to what I said before. It's like when you see what America's done, America went into Iraq for no reason. Like they went in there to kill somebody and they ended up killing thousands of
Well,
innocent people in the fray. It's like, of course, why would anyone trust America with that? It's like that's how America, I feel like, has solved almost every war. It's like even if you're going back to like World War II, they bombed Hiroshima, they bombed Nagasaki. Like, yes, that ended up winning World War II, but you ended up killing innocent people in the process of
yeah.
trying to like.
Well, and what's wild with that is they did that knowing the risk that there was a chance they could destroy the entire world. When they dropped those bombs, there was there was a risk in dropping those bombs that the atomic bombs would burn the entire atmosphere of the world and basically kill everyone on the planet. They don't teach that in school, but
I did
they
not
when
know
they
that.
dropped
No,
those, yeah, when they dropped those bombs, that was a risk, and they did it anyway. The like the the like it was either they killed the like hundreds of thousands or however many I don't know the exact number, however many that like that were killed just locally by the bomb, or the entire world. And like either way you look at it, mass destruction, and they did it anyway.
that's crazy. I understand why they wouldn't teach that. I'm gonna say in American schools before. I can understand why they wouldn't teach that in American schools now because like, well, I shouldn't say all American schools. I'm gonna say Florida because let's get real. Florida's the part where they like ban books and they want to ban history. Where it's like, what was that? I think that at some point they were trying to say that like they almost wanted to make slavery seem like voluntary. It's like voluntary.
Hmm.
People
Yeah,
voluntarily left their homes
I know
to
that was
come.
like they gained, look at all the skills that they gained, and they were like we rescued them from the wars that were in their land. And like so it's so twisted. It's all just like gaslighting and psychological manipulation.
And it's like, this is the thing that I will say. Like, and they can say whatever they want. They can point out their like few examples of this. I don't give a fucking saying this. The Republican Party is a literally almost entirely built of racists. Like, you, everyone's like, but you have Candace Owens, but you have this person. I'm like, have you ever listened to what Candace Owens has said? She doesn't say positive things about black people. Like, never.
Yeah, I know, because they're the ones that want to continue to perpetuate a racist system, and like don't want to accept that it's racist. But we can't not accept that if we're going to move forward. Like it is a system that was built on slavery. It is racist, and as long as we continue to perpetuate it, that is a problem.
Yeah, and it's like, granted, I will say this. I'm almost the last question. But it's like, with that, it's like, this thing about, it's like, yes, when people look at like reparations for slavery, yes, I agree that like there need to be reparations for slavery. But I don't think the solution is what some people think, which is simply you hand black people money. That's that sounds like a great idea in theory, but it's like the solution is, at least in the way I view it, it's like you need to go into poorer communities, especially that are primarily black communities, and you need to put in infrastructure,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
that's
in
some
like food and clean water and healthcare and like access to like housing and all of that and
yeah.
education. It's all of the things.
But some people are like, this is the. I don't know. I'm not gonna go on this.
That's
I'm
where
gonna
it's pull
say,
yourself up by your bootstraps.
yeah. This thing of the thing that drives me crazy is when people say we don't have the money for it. What? What do you mean we don't have the money for it? We have them. This is the thing. When people look at, I know this stuff because I used to do research. I used to do political show, so it's like I do the research. When you have the Pentagon, who gets billions of dollars a year, and
Hmm.
they and until very recently didn't have to justify any of it. It's like, so
Yeah.
you have plenty of money to spend on all of these people to like go give weapons to other countries, but you don't have any money to take care of the guy who's sitting in the streets of New York, literally dying because he can't get a house because of
Yeah.
the inflation in housing. It's like everyone's whole excuse of, because they used this excuse originally. They're like, "Oh, the pandemic, we lost money." Really? What's your excuse now? We've been out of the pandemic for 2.5 years.
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
and then you have 1% of the population who has a majority of the wealth in the country. And yet, if we try to tax them at higher rates, that's a problem. Because that's their money, but they actually made it on the backs of all of the people who can't really afford to live.
right. And this is the thing. I understand theoretically CEOs and all these people theoretically had to go to school for shit and like they sit there like manipulating stocks and bonds and apparently that's hard work. Let me tell you this. I mean, granted, I used to work one of the jobs. I used to work in the service industry. I worked in the service industry till um I ended up developing bone spurs in the heels of both of my feet because I was just working that hard. So it's like
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, granted, yes, I work an office job now, but it's like trust. You don't know that feeling of the thing when I tell people this, and this is honestly true. There was a point where like I was struggling to walk every day. Like, and it's like, and I kept going to work trying to like push into this like system. And it's like
Yeah.
when you're sitting up in an office, literally in a skyscraper, looking down upon the people who are actually doing hard work, you don't need that much wealth. This is the thing. I think somebody said it's like once you get above $100,000 a year, you lose all sight of reality. So it's like you making what? Jeff Bezos is a fucking billionaire. It's like that person's not going to be able to relate to the common person. Like,
Mhm.
and it's like, so what? He loses some of his billions. He only becomes a millionaire. Guess what you could do with $1 million? You could survive almost. You probably wouldn't be able to survive forever, but you could survive a long time at $1 million.
I mean, yeah, and if you gave up some of the billions and then
Yeah,
you even just were smart with the million you had left and reinvested, you could probably get back up to billions if you really like did it right like you did the first time.
yeah. It's like this fact of people need to keep their money. I don't know. I'm one of those people who's like, I guess when you're a person who never strives to live in a house, the idea of like not living in a house or like having like, which to be clear, when I say that to people, I want to own something, but I don't want to own like a physical like house. Like
Mhm.
I want to live in like a condo at some point. Like
Yeah.
that'd be my ultimate goal. It's like when you look at like the housing market and like how much it costs to live in a house in, I think I'm gonna take like LA. I think in LA, I might be wrong about this. I think it costs almost $1 million to live in a house. Like,
Probably more in a
yeah.
lot of them.
And it's like, so clearly the only people living in houses is why in Los Angeles you see like all these people in like Beverly Hills and all that, and they're like all these rich celebrities, and they're like, wow, these people have these big extravagant houses. It's like that thing with that, I honestly believe it's propaganda. Like going back to what I said before, that like wealth thing. It's like it's all propaganda to make you feel like if you, if you work hard enough, you'll get this. No.
Mm-mm.
Here
Yeah.
here's the truth. You're going to get wealthy one of two ways. You're either born into a wealthy family or you're going to suck somebody's dick to get a lot of money. That's
Yeah.
that's that's honestly how it is. Like everyone who's like you can work hard, you have to be in the right place at the right time. And it's like that's not going to happen, especially if you're like an artist. That's not going to happen for you
Yeah, in order to
a lot
suck
of
that dick,
times.
you
Yeah.
have to be in the right place at the right time to get that dick.
Yeah.
That's gonna get you all that money.
Exactly. And it's like I kind of like half jokingly said on here before that I would have no problem sleeping with an executive, but it's like I'm like maybe it depends. I don't know. As I said,
Get the
clearly
money up front.
yeah, I'm not. I'm clearly not about like. I'm clearly not about money or fame. As I always tell people, I'm not about money or fame. I'm about what money can buy. If we lived in like a barter system, I was able to buy like, or if I was able to get shoes and wigs through bartering, fuck, I'd love that. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, we live in America, so keep on spending that money anyway. So, to my final question, what's the biggest misconception about you?
The biggest misconception. Um, I think the biggest misconception people have about me is um that I'm not friendly. Um, and this is like probably more so from maybe from people who haven't had a conversation with me. Um, because if you have a conversation with me, I think you figure it out. But like, I tend to have like pretty solid resting bitch face, I think. And if I until I like until I've had a conversation and kind of warm up to you, I can be kind of introverted, and so like I'm not the person who like goes and introduces myself to everybody. And so I think sometimes people see me like as maybe standoffish.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I'll tell you why people think that he's like attractive, muscular gay guy. People's first misconception, bitch. Like,
Fair,
I'm,
fair.
yeah, it's like, because that's a lot of people, but it's like, first of all, the person who's usually like going up and introducing themselves to all the people at the like event, that's usually the fakest motherfucker out there. Like, I'm gonna say that now. Like, my thing is, I kind of get that. Like, I always say, as a drag queen, I mean, granted, I'm tall. I'm literally like so fucking tall. Like I'm 6'3", like
Okay. Yeah.
out of heels. So like when I put on shoes, I'm like 6'6",
Uh-huh.
6'7", 6'8". It's like, and I'm wearing sunglasses inside. Not these. These are my interview glasses. I got these in a brand deal. The glasses that I wear are they're a pair of my mom's. It's like
Mhm.
It's like for me, I started wearing them when I was first started performing because it's like my view is that's a chance to like take some of her energy with me. So like
Yeah.
she's always there when I perform. So that's usually
And she's
where
kind of looking through the glasses while you're there.
yes. So it's like yes, I'm wearing sunglasses inside. It's like I'm tall. It's like and the thing about being a drag queen is most of the time you don't have to start conversations with people. A lot of times people just come up and talk to you.
Yeah.
And as I say, I am completely fine with that. I'm completely fine with taking pictures, except do not stop me when I'm in the middle of performing. To
Yeah.
like stand there and take a picture. This happened to me once in Orlando. And I'm like,
Wow.
and I was literally I was like at an open mic night. My track was literally playing, and I'm like, I sit there, smiled for the picture, and then I had done two originals. I was doing Do What You Want by Lady Gaga to close my set. And it's like
Mhm.
I had the instrumental playing, and then all of a sudden, when they were done with the picture, I had to right on the beat. And that's I don't think what people understand is as a performer, like when that kind of stuff happens, you're not able to be in the moment and enjoy it because you have to think about God, where am I starting? Where am I starting? Where am I starting? Where am I starting? And it's like, because you don't want to mess up.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes the only other time that happened to me was not that, but like I had a moment where like I was in a competition and like one of the judges, I believe, sabotaged me to lose because
Wow.
the DJ was playing my track and this judge knew that I had to sing live and wasn't handing me a microphone.
What? That's
So
messed
I'm
up.
like, that's why I looked at her, I'm like, I need a microphone. And then like it was one of the things where like the judge started and then all of a sudden I got my microphone. It was like right in when I got my microphone and I'm like, granted, I killed it and I lost because of nepotism in this area. I will say this.
Mm.
I am someone who has a love-hate relationship with nepotism. I love it when I can do things as a nepotism person where like I can give people advantages
Mhm.
to be like, "Oh yeah, you're my friend. Of course I'm going to get you this gig with this person or that person." I hate it when it's going against me.
Yeah. No, I feel you.
Yeah.
I think we all think similarly.
Yes. But yeah, those are the two with that. Anyway, with that being said, it was a pleasure getting to meet you.
You as well. This is a joy. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm so grateful that you had me come on here.
Of course. And with that being said, this is Gay Out the City. I'm your host, Prince Electro Diamond, and I hope you've enjoyed.
Bye.